Ulf was born in Stockholm, Sweden, on February 12, 1928. He grew up in an apartment building. Before immigrating to America in 1950, he was active in many competitive sports and hobbies and received many blue ribbons, trophies, and medals in soccer, table tennis, chess, ice hockey, swimming, and was picked for Sweden's Olympic boxing team, all before he was 21. Ulf moved to the United States before he could compete in the Olympics. Ulf was in the music corps in the Swedish Army. He had a Dixieland band in which he played trumpet and had occasion to play with Tyree Glenn aboard the SS Drottningholm, receiving an applause from Louis Armstrong, going from Sweden to the United States. Ulf arrived in New York in 1950 and played trumpet in various locations, once being invited to share a drink with Bill Harris and Charlie Ventura. He traveled cross-country from New York to Seattle by Greyhound bus and visited many cities along the way. 3 months later, Ulf arrived in Seattle with $50 in his pocket. He stayed with his Aunt Signe and Uncle David. His uncle taught him to drive and got him a job in construction. Ulf bought a car with his first paycheck. Dolores met Ulf the summer of 1950. He enrolled at Seattle University in the fall of 1950 and was on their ski team. In 1951, Ulf transferred to the University of Washington and was on their soccer team. Also, while at the U of W, Ulf was challenged by one of the basketball team members to a basketball competition to see who could make 10 baskets first. Ulf had never played basketball but won the competition by making all 10 baskets by shooting the ball from bouncing it off of his head. It was at the University of Washington where he was introduced to pool, which he continued to play and compete in his entire life. At one point, he was on a tournament team playing with Paul Chang and Art Schuff, who he also competed with in table tennis tournaments. He always said that the two sports complemented each other because of the wrist action required. In May of 1951, Dolores, Petsy, and Ulf were married. Ulf and Petsy went on a honeymoon trip to Harrison Hot Springs, Canada. They were both University of Washington students. They spent 2 summers working in Alaska, Ulf working in construction and Petsy dancing, and earned enough money to pay for school tuition. During their time in Alaska, Ulf spent a lot of hours hiking with friends. At least twice they had encounters with bears. Once, Ulf was hiking and surprised a brown bear that was standing on his hind legs approximately 40 feet away. Ulf took out his big knife and stared the bear down. The bear ended up getting down on all fours and walking away. Another time, Ulf and a friend were driving down the Alcan Highway and their brakes went out, traveling down a hill. As a brown bear ran in front of them to try to get away from the car, they realized that the bear was running approximately 45 miles per hour. In 1954, Ulf had volunteered for the military before being drafted to go to Korea. He was sent to Bremerhaven, Germany instead because he passed tests for comprehension of 7 languages. Petsy joined him and they lived there for 1.5 years. While stationed in Germany, they were able to travel a lot. Sweden, France, Holland, and England. And Petsy met Ulf's mother, Elsa, and his half-siblings from his mother's side in Sweden. Erna, Petsy's sister, stayed with them for a while. Once on vacation in Holland with Petsy's sister Erna and Ulf's best friend Aya and his wife Yvonne, they all dressed up in Dutch costumes to tour the city. A bus full of American tourists mistook them for Dutchmen and began asking them if they could take their picture. Ulf and Aya spoke Swedish, but the Americans did not know the difference. They agreed to have their pictures taken. Their first child, Karin Elizabeth, was born in Germany in 1956. Ulf returned to his studies in industrial relations and law at University of Washington when they got back to Seattle in late 1956. They lived in student housing until 1958, when Ulf's Aunt Signe passed away and they moved into her house in Ballard, Washington, and took care of David and Mary Ann, her orphan children. Ulf's brother, Staffen, also lived with them. Lisa Catherine, Eric Ulf Aron, and Rolf Björn Peter were all born while they lived in Ballard. They definitely had a house full. In Seattle, Ulf enjoyed a lot of fishing, hunting, camping, hiking, and kayaking. He and Petsy's cousin, Murray, built their own kayaks and they had a great time on Lake Washington and the Snoqualmie River. After Ulf graduated from the University of Washington, he worked at Boeing and they bought a house in Edmonds. Trudy, Ulf's sister, lived with them for a while and was the nanny for their 4 kids. During that time, they purchased some property on the Stillaguamish River in 1963 and planned to build a cabin there for skiing at Mount Pilchuck. They had a lot of good camping on the property, but didn't build on it until 1997. Never did ski there as the lodge burned down at Mount Pilchuck. In 1965, Ulf became employed with Omark Chainsaw Company as their international personnel manager in Portland, Oregon. They left Seattle. Their kids hated to leave, so they promised them they could live on a farm with horses. They rented it with the option to buy an 80-acre farm in Ridgefield, Washington. This was their introduction to farming and ranching, and Ulf loved learning all about it. He went to the library for books on everything. He learned to build barns, pig houses, and fences. He learned to ride and train horses. He bought an Alice Chalmers tractor. He learned to plant and harvest hay and rye oats, gaining a reputation for having the best crops in the county at the time. This was a time when Ulf became interested in gardening, which was to become a lifelong hobby, growing sunflowers up to 12 feet tall. They had horses, cows, goats, pigs, chickens, and cats and dogs. He was always learning the best way to run a farm from books and advice from old farmers. However, Ulf's trips to Europe with Omark meant he was often gone from the family and the farm. He changed jobs to Industrial Relations Manager at Pendleton Woolen Mills, Portland, Oregon. In 1969, they bought 250 acres in La Center on the East Fork of the Lewis River. There was too much traveling with Omark, and he wanted to concentrate more on the new ranch. This new ranch was dubbed the Bar UK River Ranch. This was the time they had up to 29 horses and over 100 cows. The whole family was involved with the horses. They built a huge barn with an indoor arena and lived in a mobile home. They had lots of activities with gaming and racing, and they all became pretty good riders. The family won many blue ribbons, trophies, medals, plaques, and belt buckles. In 1974, they began endurance riding. The boys, Ulf and Pat, were riding 50 and 100-mile rides almost every weekend. They won 5 bronze medallions, and Ulf got a 1,000-mile award for one season of riding. Ulf also enjoyed table tennis tournaments, chess, and running 10Ks. From 1979 to 1985, Ulf participated in 20-plus marathons. Once, while training for one of the marathons at 60 years old, Ulf ended up carrying his dog, Siggy, on his shoulders halfway home from Battleground, approximately 7 miles. In 1976, they held horse shows in the barn and started the Lewis River Riders Club and opened the Bottomlands for riding. It was a great, fun family time. Also in 1976, Ulf's father, Arn, whom he never really knew, passed away. And Ulf found out that he had another Swedish family of half-siblings that he had never known. Over the years, they would travel to the USA, as well as Ulf and Patsy would make multiple trips to Sweden. Ulf retired in 1984. Just before his retirement, he became interested in photography and won many awards at the county fair with his beautiful photos of flowers, wildlife, and his small grandchildren. In 1984, while at a Swedish festival, Ulf won a month-long trip to Sweden by estimating how many beer cans, mathematically, were in a small boat. He was only off by a few cans. During his trip to Sweden, which took place in 1985, he rode his bike from Skåne to Stockholm, from one end of the country to the other, in 1 week. While in Lapland, Ulf taught the Samis how to get smoke out of their teepees. And climbed a mountain to see the midnight sun. They had a wonderful vacation in Sweden, and when they returned, their boys and son-in-laws, Jeff and Steve, surprised them by building a gazebo on Turtle Beach, where they held the river romp every year on the first weekend in August, since 1985. The river romp still continues. Another larger gazebo was built in 2018. After retiring, Ulf decided to invest in Limousin cattle. They bought a registered Limousin cow from Brazil and worked with a vet to harvest her eggs. They had a prize-winning Limousin bull's sperm to make the eggs fertile. Then the vet implanted the fertile eggs in 32 of their unregistered cows. In the spring, they had 30 registered Limousin calves. This was an interesting and fascinating project for Ulf. However, cattle prices went down and they ended up selling their herd for a small profit. Also during this time, Ulf sold computers door to door in order to make more money. It became apparent that Ulf was also a great salesman, making over $2,000 a week in commissions. In 1990, Ulf and Pet put a 40-foot Army surplus tent up at Trollbu, which they camped in and vacationed in for years. In 1992, Jeff built a guest house and a gazebo, which Ulf and Pet enjoyed with family for many years to come. In 1997, they decided to build a house on the Stillaguamish River property, Trollbu, which they had owned since 1963. Their son-in-law, Jeff Lowry, did all of the preparations and framed the house. The Kahns then became the contractors of the building, and Jerry Houston, Angel's husband, finished the building. They moved there in 1998. They enjoyed hiking, biking, and mountain climbing in the beautiful environment of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. They loved the lakes, rivers, and mountains, Lake 22, Mount Pilchuck, and Mount Dickerman. Their children were all married at that time, and they enjoyed a peaceful retirement.
Your coat, don't forget your hat, but leave your worries, leave them on the doorstep. Life's sweet, just direct your feet to the sunny, sunny side of the street. Hop off a new that pitter-pat, you know that happy tune is my step. Life's all reet, if you dig that beat. On the sunny, sunny side of the street, used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade. What a track, old man.
In 2000, Jeff built living quarters in the barn on the Bar UK River Ranch, where they would spend a couple of weekends a month. They enjoyed their visits to the ranch. Ulf and Petsy had given 1 acre to each of their children, and some were living on the ranch at the time with their families.
say I'm not good without you. Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I'll never use them. Short goodbye, like baby does that night. How can I go on there without you? You took the part that I once was behind, so why not take all of me? I'm not good without you. You took the part that I once was behind, so why not take all of? Why not take all of me?
They rented out Trollbu and returned permanently to the ranch in 2011. Ulf and Patsy lived in the rec area of the barn until 2014, when Jeff built the house that Patsy lives in presently. Their joy is now derived from being close to their kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids. They also have done a lot of traveling. Sweden, Hawaii, 10 cruises, and national park lodges, and of course, Long Beach, Washington, staying at Chautauqua Lodge, which they had done quite a few times. In 2018, Ulf and Patsy went on 2 cruises, one with Trudy and one with Rolf. In 2019, Ulf went on a cruise with Karn, Lisa, and Jeff, and in 2020, Ulf and Patsy went on their last trip to Sun Mountain Lodge with Deana, Trudy, and Per, and the Fleege family. Ulf lived life to the fullest, with Patsy enjoying walking the loop on the Bar UK, going on short drives, dining out, being with family and friends on the ranch, and Ulf always enjoyed playing pool and having the river romp to look forward to every summer. During Ulf's last days, he became ill in January and received hospice care from his family and veterans caregivers until mid-May. Repeatedly, he showed great strength and determination to let Petsy and his family know how very much he loved them and wanted them to celebrate life. Ulf passed away on May 13th, 2020, surrounded by the love of his life and his children.